But I want to talk to you about grief, bereavement, mourning, all these things. Um, Grief is something that we all must wrestle with when there is a loss, especially a death or whatever. But it is something you cannot ignore. And it's something to understand. And a lot of people, well, they didn't do it the way well, no, people don't grieve the same. Everybody grieves differently. There are some people who they try to obfuscate. It's not real. I'm just going to not deal with it. There are people who are quiet. There are people who are loud when it comes to grieving. There are people who deal with grief in all sorts of ways. So again, just because somebody is not grieving the way that you grieve doesn't mean they're not grieving. Just understand that. I've seen all sorts of grief, all sorts of ways, but it is something we all must deal with. If you don't grieve, then it's unhealthy. And again, you need to deal with it in your own way. So we go through a process. They call it Kubler-Ross, and there's all these stages of grief, and they make it sound like it's a linear thing. Okay, you deal with this and you deal with that. No, it's jumbled. It's the worst roller coaster ride you ever been. You can go back and forth through state. You're all over the place, but you must deal with it. Normally, and this is just a kind of a very loose rule, but normally it takes the average person about 2 years to deal and to register and to work with grief and come to a point where they can finally move forward. Now, some less, some a little more, but if you go long periods of time, I've known people who have grieved 30, 40 years, that's unhealthy, that's not good. There is a thing, I got a little book that I give to folks called Good Grief. You need to work through your grief, and however you do that, that's between you and God. But grieve, mourn, deal with things. And loss is tough and it's hard, but it's something that must be faced. If you try to ignore it, you can't just praise God and get through. I know, just sing another song. Praise the Lord. And it'll work. You will come down from your high about 30 minutes later, and your grief is still there. You got to deal with it, and it is a process for each and every person. And it's something that I suggest. If you're having issues, go talk to your pastor. If your pastor cannot help you with grief and doesn't been trained a little bit, you might want to find somebody else. But go somewhere. There's nothing wrong with seeking counseling out. Nothing wrong with any of these things. But just remember, grief is something that must be dealt with. And everybody deals with it in different ways. I pray today that God would bless and keep you this day and all.